toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls, who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. Praise be to Thee, most supreme God, omnipotent, omnipresent, all-pervading, the only being. Take us in Thy parental arms, raise us from the denseness of the earth. Thy beauty do we worship, to Thee do we give willing surrender. Most merciful and compassionate God, the idealized Lord of whole humanity, Thee only do we worship, and towards Thee alone do we aspire. Open our hearts towards Thy beauty, illuminate our souls with divine light. O Thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, all-powerful Creator, Sustainer, Judge, and Forgiver of our shortcomings, Lord God of the East and the West, of the worlds above and below, and of the seen and unseen beings, pour upon us Thy love and Thy light. Give sustenance to our bodies, hearts, and souls. Use us for the purpose of Thy wisdom chooser, and guide us on the path of Thy own goodness. Draw us closer to Thee every moment of our life, until in us be reflected Thy grace, Thy glory, Thy wisdom, Thy joy, and Thy peace. Amen. You know, I realize I don't have the microphone. Can you hear?
No.
Oh, okay.
I could sit next to you.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Sure, do that. I'll help you sit.
Oh, I don't want to do it. No, no.
No, you won't be. You won't be in it.
Are you
won't be in the
filming?
picture.
You're
Yeah,
filming.
I
Oh,
won't see
maybe
you.
I
I don't want to
the
be.
thing.
I won't see you.
I'll just come in. Tell me if I'm interfering.
No, you won't.
He's bringing the microphone over.
Oh.
He's quick.
Yeah, that was.
I must say I don't remember reading this one. Morning, Ron. Well, I was under the impression we were doing the last one. Is that right, Saeed?
We could. When Davy and
Louise?
were here, they read the last one.
Oh, okay.
And so then they read the first one.
Ah, okay. Okay, well, maybe I'll read the second one. We'll start again because I think that there's a lot in here. So it's Directions for Field Workers, number 2. In general, the instructions for the workers in the cause of God are the same as for self-protection, except that in the one case
you protect yourself against the person you meet, so you can bring them closer to the truth and enlightenment. And in this case, you go deliberately to attract people. In the one, you open the door for God, and in the other, God opens the door for you, but they are not so different. If a person does not know how to protect himself, how to ward off an enemy, how to avoid dispute with friends, how to make a favorable impression on a stranger, it is far better that such a one discuss Sufism with nobody. A favorable impression is better than all the arguments or information in the world. Let me ask you, how do you protect yourself? I'm sure over the years, maybe you've been given something. I'd be curious to hear.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar, right?
What was the answer?
Allahu Akbar. And I've been given like toward the one united with all.
That too.
Or writing Allah with your mind over something.
The breath technique, the Tibetan, where you picture the fire in the solar plexus, and you take everything in and transmute it, and it comes out as light.
Right,
So it passes
yeah.
through you.
Through you, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else from anyone? Do you have anything, Tajali, that you know?
No, it's bringing up a question for me. Like with Allah, you know, to me that's after the fact. So like, when someone's attacking you, is that what you're referring to?
Well, just, I think so, yes. Or when, in the previous one, there was, well, I don't know where it was. It's not exactly in the previous one, but there was, you know, need to be able to protect yourself as you spread the message. I guess from attack, yes.
Or even from just...
Picking up
Yeah.
unfavorable impressions, yeah. Keeping oneself like a channel.
Yeah, just surrounding yourself with this protective bubble and light and I use a lot.
Yeah.
Just everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
I use Yavakil sometimes too.
Yeah. So we all know something, right?
I do something quite different, you know, that I doesn't know if it's good or not.
Sure. Does it work? If it
It's,
works,
yeah,
it's good.
it's there's nothing to hit at. There's no me there, and so there isn't any fight. How can there be a fight? You know,
Yeah.
there's no me to fight, so it just goes right through. And then, but I still listen.
Uh-huh.
You know, so
Okay.
it's a different way of protecting.
That's a very advanced way.
That's turning the cheek.
It's like what Jerry's saying, like with the Raphael at work.
Mm-hmm.
I have not been taught or have done where you're protecting yourself. You're just so in a space where it's like you're saying, there is no fighting or attacking or taking on impressions. It's just, but I am interested in the part about which I never thought of before. If someone is actually literally coming at you verbally, let's say, is to just, instead of just trying to watch your breath and stay calm, to do like Allahu Akbar or
Yeah.
one of those, okay.
Or you can write, you know, Allah across their heart or across your heart.
See, that I do after, like when I'm doing my practices.
Mhm.
If there's some kind of pain, emotional pain, then I do that. But
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so, how about how to avoid dispute with friends? Do we all know that? I feel like I'm still learning that one. how to make a favorable impression on a stranger. Those are the...
Well, I liked what Davy taught over the years from the Raphaelite work, I think, in the one-to-one processing of having your own sense of atmosphere, space, and having a sense of their atmosphere, space, and then having a sense of this overlapping space between you, so that that's like the safety place where, so that it would be less, it would be easier and not, it would be more avoidable. I'm trying to know words I'm trying to find to dispute when you're have those boundaries.
Right.
That's very nice. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
So I mean, it works for one-to-one processing, but it also keeps you from getting over involved.
And that's a good place to practice it.
Yeah, and I think that would also help with friends when you're just talking and you're not even thinking about one-to-one processing, but to bring that in when you start to feel that irritation or that, like, what the are you talking, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
To have that, you know, distance or, and still you're still involved, but you have a sense of the boundary. You can probably talk about that better than I can. She kind of practices it. I know she does.
I'm talking about how to protect ourselves, Betty. How to protect yourself, how to ward off an enemy, how to avoid dispute with friends, and how to make a favorable impression on a stranger.
You know, I think about it psychologically. If a person is attacking me, I would hope I would first check my ego, whether it came out, and then if it didn't, I would wonder about the person's mental stability. And I think if you 98% of the time, if you aren't coming out of ego, you don't have to worry about being attacked.
That's probably that clear space that Mohan and Tajali, it's kind of the same. I think. Okay, let's continue. Now, there are at least three ways in which you may act. Firstly, under direction given in a dream, vision, or outer command by a spiritual authority, sheikh, caliph, or murshid. Second, through an impression or intuition of your own. And third, through the breath or atmosphere. In the first case, you act very much as in the lessons on self-protection, keeping in Darude, but if you are more at ease by inhaling Ishkala and exhaling Mabud Lila, do so. And I think in the first case, he's not talking about under direction given in a dream, but you know, that's the first way we can act, by keeping in Darude through all difficulties. And of course, when you ascertain there is illness, it is always Ya Shafi, Ya Kafi. And sometimes you may be sent to a sick person ostensibly to help them, and yet actually to bring a message for someone else. The truth is that there is a lesson in every activity in life, and sometimes it is evident on the surface, and sometimes it is very hidden. In serving God and the Holy Ones, one does not always know exactly what the reason is. You cannot predict a crop when you plant a seed. Much can occur before harvest time. So to you is given action, but to Allah belongs the fruit of that action. So that's always something to remember, that we don't always know why we are being sent, or what the underlying reason is. I think that can make us humble too. You will not always go on mission to preach Sufism. Sometimes there will be a very subtle element in your experience. This will particularly be true from a dream or vision, where not only a direction is given, but it must be transmuted also into physical terms. But the Talib does not differentiate between inner and outer directions. Perhaps his sheikh also has had an inner vision in which it was manifested that the Talib must or would do a certain duty. Therefore, obedient response and implicit trust is necessary for the representatives in the cause of God. So that's an interesting thing to think about, that we should not differentiate between inner and outer directions. Because I know in the beginning, I don't know about you, but I always, like if someone, if Shahabani told me to do something, I felt that it was a more strong direction, say, than if my own self told me to do something. Because in the beginning, one's not so firmly, one doesn't necessarily have faith in yourself. But I think as we grow, we learn to have more faith in our own soul. And that there is less difference between what's inside and what's outside.
There's a peculiar skill that you sometimes can develop inside, which is that you listen for authentic responses coming towards you. Mm-hmm. And so you're listening from inside, and so your spirit of guidance is kind of saying, this is authentic. I feel this. I feel the clarity of this.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's the outer direction that you take as the inner direction. I mean, it becomes your direction, just as if the sheikh had said something to you or God had whispered in your ear. So there's the idea of authenticity. That's one that works for me. When I feel a really authentic response, I take it as an instruction. It makes it nice. Bettina yesterday, wow, there she is.
What did I do?
When you expressed your need, it was a very authentic need. It felt clear and authentic, and so us in the group just immediately responded to it because it was just like a command almost. Here's an authentic need, So.
Yeah, but there will be times when people say they're following inner guidance, and everybody else, it's not so clear.
Mistakes are made.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think this is where, we have to really have integrity as regards to, guidance that we're given either from within or through a dream, or, even from our spiritual guide. I know Shahabani is always saying, if your guide tells you something to do something that is, you really feel like you ought not to do, don't do it. So therefore, obedient response and implicit trust is necessary. So I say with caution. Beside that, it especially cautions Darood It is well to examine the breath before, during, and after each interview, to note the state of one's own mind and to be alert to each opportunity. Take oneself to task in each case. Where you find yourself blameless, you will generally discover that the other person is either not awakened or has the tendency to divide and separate name and form and ignore the God above name and form. God above name and form. Always keep the holy ones as living examples of your ideals, and you will not go astray. They are present and will guide you. To him who serves the cause of God, the spirit of guidance gives every inspiration, and the heart attuned to the omnipresent will never lack in time of seeming need. The spirit of guidance gives every inspiration, and the heart attuned to the omnipresent will never lack in time of seeming need. Number 3. Whenever you meet anybody, especially a stranger, always trust your first impression. But there is a difference between a true impression and an impulsive liking or disliking. So I think that's an important differentiation there. The true impression will always come before the first breath is consummated. But if you have been in Darude, the impression and the instinctive feeling will be the same. Do not judge yourself or the other person. Judging is a mental act and requires at least one breath, and the second breath is a new concentration. So I think this tells us that, breath really is the method by which we can judge our own guidance, the guidance of others, our impressions, and
Can you read the first and second breath, the discussion a little more?
Yeah. The true impression will always come before the first breath is consummated. So I think that's the in and the out. But if you have been in Darude, the impression and the instinctive feeling will be the same.
The impression and the instinctive feeling.
And the instinctive feeling, he's talking about, there's a difference between a true impression and impulsive liking or disliking.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So impulsive liking or disliking.
You know how that is, you...
Yeah, well, even a projection is what I was going to say on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like my grandmother, so she looks like my grandmother, so therefore she's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
That might not be the person at all. You're projecting something onto that person.
Yeah.
Which then you like or you don't like, or whatever. So I think the projections too.
Because there's other teachings, I don't know if any of you have read them, where you can get guidance on something by where your breath is as they're telling you things. So if it's a Jamal breath, then what they're telling you could be either favorable or unfavorable, and the same with the Jalal breath. And so, ultimately, we really actually need to be very sensitive to our, where we are in our breath, whether it's inward, outward, upwards, downwards, neither, Kamal, all of those things. So do not judge yourself or the other person. Judging is a mental act and requires at least one breath. And the second breath is a new concentration. The first concentration was based on sensual activity. And though it lasted but one breath, still it was a concentration. The second concentration, albeit also but a breath in time, is an inner mental concentration of such a different nature that it destroys the effect of the first, even when it partially coincides with it. So it's like we have to be so sensitive to that first breath, because as you can see it, it's fleeting, and then we're on the next breath. Let's just take a minute to breathe and just feel our own breath. And we can see whether one nostril is stronger than another, or whether the in is stronger than the out. Whether the energy moves up or down. We can attune to the current that is carried on the breath, prana. We can put our thought on the breath, breathing in toward the one and out toward the one. therefore being with oneness. Let's read on. One reason is, and here he's talking about the way in which the second breath is of such a different nature. One reason is that the glance receives the magnetism both of the breath and eye of the other person, and these cannot be simulated. Even if that person veils his nature or hides himself or acts, so to speak, he does not do it on the first glance. Then he is sizing you up, and in that instance is himself. In the next instant, both of you are bringing mental forces into play. The first glance and first impression are directly from the soul. After that, the soul covers itself with the mind, and no matter how pure the mind is, unless both minds are pure, the true nature of one or the other characters is beclouded. Therefore, there is another interpretation of judge not, and that is, accept all that is given in the first impression. Accept all that is given in the first impression. Now, if the impression is indecisive or unfavorable, your fikr is Allahu Akbar. But if it is favorable, it is best to continue in Darood. And even if indecisive, after a few breaths, go back to Darood, which is always the safest practice. Very often you can do this before you meet the person. Sometimes the name alone or a slight description will give an impression which will later turn out to be correct. Especially will this be true if you have been in Darood. So if your impression is indecisive or favorable, our fikr is Allahu Akbar. And if favorable, Darood. I like the... No, if it's indecisive, it's Allahu Akbar, but even if indecisive, after a few breaths, we can go back to Darood, which is always the safest practice. So I don't know about you, but I'm a one practice person, so I would stick with Darood. But Allahu Akbar is also there.
Do you do that verbally, or is it
Silently.
Yeah, but I meant inside. Does it become still verbal, or is it kind of a different vibration than verbal? You know, there's a chant you can do that's sort of a very verbal mind chant. That's these words, and then there's something that's more subtle. You know, and I just wondered what it was like for you since you've practiced this.
Vibration.
Vibration. And the words are there.
The words are there. Don't you? How about anyone else?
Always the words.
The words are there. It's not fikr or seer, is it? I mean, is
No,
that what you're
it's
talking
fikr.
about? It's fikr.
But the words make a vibration.
What I was listening for was this
What do you think,
vibration.
Sangatha?
Well, there's the observation of someone made of Murshid sleeping, where he was moving his lips, saying Allahu Akbar on his breath as he slept. So the fact that one could detect what he was, in effect, saying suggests that words were involved at that level. Now, my own experience is that, yes, I'm keeping the words there. Of course, the brain being a busy place, that can be going on while, meanwhile, you're thinking about whether your tires are wearing out too quickly on the road or something.
You know what I do, I hadn't really thought about it, but when I meet someone whose energy I think is very frightening to me, particularly like a street person or someone who's talking to themselves, I start with the Allahu Akbar, and it kind of just will help me not be so scared.
Mhm.
But then I want to go into kind of like projecting them. Once I realize that I'm out of danger, they're starting to talk to me or whatever, and I'm trying to nicely not do it. But there's at the same time, and I don't know if I'm doing it at the same time, but it's more like kind of sending them blessings and sending them love and realizing that it's hard for them. But it seems like I'm doing both of those or trying to at the same time. I don't know, maybe I should do one or the other.
Well,
I feel like I need this Allahu Akbar shield. It's like a guardhouse shield around me, is the way I envision it.
Mhm. well, if you do need to protect yourself, you do need to protect yourself. But I think he's, well, let's just take, do not judge yourself or the other person as our guidelines here.
Mhm.
You know, we just do what we can. And we can always do, as we grow, we can always do more. And, in certain states, sometimes we're just in a state that is kind of on, and sometimes we're not. And I think we need to know, what our capacity is at every moment. And, we mess up. And, there are times when I feel like I could have helped that person more, and I didn't usually it's because I'm in a rush, But, we kind of learn and move on, and I actually do like this, do not judge yourself or the other person. We do what we can in the moment. And for myself, what I'm getting from this is, try and be in that moment where we are aware of our breath, and that it's, more and more, so that every breath is in that moment. I mean, that's a big goal, but, I've still got a few years, so I can try for it. After meeting the person, if the impression has been favorable, very often certain preliminaries can be dispensed with. This is more likely when one has been sent for or a distinct problem is presented. There is no one way, nor are there a million ways to introduce yourself or your subject. Remember, each occasion is not only an opportunity to help another, it is also an opportunity to help ourselves. It's actually, he says, to help yourself. So each occasion is not only an opportunity to help another, it is also an opportunity to help yourself. And what do you think he means by there's no one way, nor are there a million ways to introduce yourself or your subject?
There are a few ways.
Yeah. In your zeal for the message, do not neglect to observe that while you may be a servant of Allah bringing a gift to another, that other may also be at any time one whom Allah has chosen to convey a direction to yourself. So the real teacher is one who is the ever alert student. So that's a beautiful thought too. Like, we don't know what that homeless person is.
Mm-hmm.
What message they're bringing to us.
Mm-hmm.
Or when people just ask you, well, what is Sufism? You know, they might be having something more delicious than what you think you have to impart to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that ties in with the guidance is within and without. You know, I mean, it's without too. You know, the guidance is there.
Right. There's
Yeah.
no separateness between our inner and our outer.
It's kind of fun to say, well, what do you think it is? And then you just listen. Ask them what they think it is.
Yeah.
It seems to me that self-monitoring is, your word integrity is excellent, because it's so critical to self-monitor and know, are you coming from something that's not very evolved, or are you coming out of heart?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're coming out of heart, the genuineness the intent can really carry almost anything. But if you're, because of tiredness or your own issues, you're coming at a different place,
Yeah.
no words, even the correct words, are going to have a good effect.
I wonder what your breath would be like when you're in those states. You know, the ones you're referring to, they're sort of not working well.
To me, I know when I'm in heart up here, there's a peacefulness and just a settledness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There is not that tension, that tightness, that, you know.
How do you differentiate, though, between self-monitoring and not judging?
Well, because I think judging is reaching a conclusion whether it's right or wrong, whereas monitoring just what is.
Yeah.
I like the word awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're aware, I think that's more clear. What I mean by that is like to stay out of the mind. Because to me, once you're in your mind, you're judging, you're coming from an ego place, you're prefiguring, someone is talking to you and you're already thinking of the answer or the response. And you're evaluating. All this stuff is going on in the mind. But I think by not being in the mind and just like staying present or to the breath, I love that, just present to the breath, then the mind is out of the way and what you're seeing is what you're seeing. It's not any more projection or any of your own stuff. And there's more of a clarity that way, or a sense of knowing. Or if something comes up, then you know, oh, I just had my button pushed.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, oh, I'm reacting, yeah. Okay, this is my thing now. It's not what they're doing, it's what's responding. What I'm reacting, not responding, but I'm reacting to something in them. But I think when you're in the mind, you're not going to see that. Because you're right. And he is bad. He is, you know. That's how I see it. My experience.
And again, when you're in the mind, what's happening to the breath, you know?
But if you're in the mind, you're not really watching the breath. But if you're watching the breath, that's keeping you focused to right here, what's happening within you and with the other person, that you can see more clearly. At least that's been my experience. You can see more clearly with yourself without the mind interpreting. Because to me, I find so many of my problems have come from misinterpreting. You know, with all my stuff put onto a situation, whether in a good way or a bad way. So it's not.
Yeah, I like the way you said it, because it's like you're disconnected from the breath. I mean, you know, you're disconnected from it.
Right, but if you're in the breath, then you're just right here.
Yeah.
No judgment, no nothing.
I think, too, that we trust our words more than we trust our presence. So very often we feel like we have to say something
Yeah.
instead of just, you know, like having a space.
Shabadin had that beautiful teaching in which you have presence together with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way you spoil it by saying, aren't we present? I mean, something like that. And it seems silly that you're not just spoiling it, you're disconnecting from it. That's the key. It doesn't matter whether it's spoiled or not, but the idea that it's disconnected. just as you were saying.
Right.
I think we have to do, rather than sometimes to just be. There's a commercial I saw of a little boy fishing with his grandfather. They're not talking, but they're so, my interpretation, they are so together. You know, or you're holding a baby, you're not talking. You're with the baby's with you, not talking, just being. I'll be quiet.
Thank you, Tajali. Well, I know you're the ultimate grandma.
You know, it's interesting what Tajali is talking about, in the mind and out of the mind, and I thought, why is "you're out of your mind" always meant to be a pejorative, you know, in the pejorative sense?
Yeah.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah.
That's
It's
bad.
good. Yeah.
You say, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Good, I made it.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Well, seems like we should have a little bit of something. Anybody want to sit here?
You're doing good.
Let's say I didn't bring my beads, but I guess I can count on my hands. Let's say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Well, we'll do 11. I can count on them. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah,
Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah,
Allahu Akbar.
Subhanallah,
Alhamdulillah,
Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, 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 Allahu Akbar. Let's end with Salat. Most gracious Lord, Master, Messiah, and Savior of humanity, we greet Thee with all humility. Thou art the first cause and the last effect, the divine light and the spirit of guidance, Alpha and Omega. Thy light is in all forms, thy love in all beings, in a loving mother, in a kind father, in an innocent child, in a helpful friend, and an inspiring teacher. Allow us to recognize thee in all thy holy names and forms, as Rama, as Krishna, as Shiva, as Buddha. Let us know thee as Abraham, Solomon, Zarathustra, Moses, as Jesus, as Muhammad, and in many other names and forms, known and unknown to the world. We adore thy past. Thy presence deeply enlightens our being, and we look for thy blessing in the future. O Messenger, Christ, Nabi, the Rasul of God, thou whose heart constantly reaches upward, thou comest on earth with a message, as a dove from above and decays, and speakest the word that is put into thy mouth, as the light filleth the crescent moon. Let the star of the divine light shining in thy heart be reflected in the hearts of thy devotees, and may the message of God reach far and wide, illuminating and making the whole of humanity as one single family in the parenthood of God. Amen.